The Mandela effect. For those of you who aren't familiar with what the Mandela effect is, let me explain it to you real quick. The Mandela effect is a phenomenon where a large group of people remember an event or detail differently from how it actually occurred. This collective misremembering can lead to widespread false memories about facts, events, or other details. The term was popularized after many people falsely remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, despite him actually being released and later becoming president of South Africa. Well, for this video, we aren't going to follow the definition to a T, since I couldn't find too many examples of the Mandela effect in Siege, so instead, for a majority of the topics, we'll just do a single person or a handful of people believing something that isn't true, and a handful of these topics will actually turn out to be true. So I asked people on my YouTube and Instagram, and I had my guy Varsity Reviews gather some stuff from wherever he could online, if there's anything that would fall under this category, and I got a bunch of responses as well as a handful of posts. But the first one we'll dive into actually comes from my comment section from over a year ago, where I got the idea for this video. This guy Mega commented about barbed wire doing damage, and it got over 1,000 likes, but this was never a thing up until recently. What made all these people think this was a thing? Maybe stepping in electrified barbed wire? Who knows? But it is really interesting that a bunch of people agreed. But if you have any idea of why people might think this way about any of the topics, feel free to talk about it in the comments. I'll be reading as many as I can, but on to the next one. Hearing the enemies calling reloads. This is not the Mandela effect. This was actually a thing that was in early Siege. It's hard to find a clip of this anywhere, but I do have a clip of myself playing from like years ago, where you can hear Smoke and Cav calling out reinforcing a wall.
Yep.
A bathtub in the coastline bathroom. This is another case of this not being the Mandela effect, and there in fact was a bathtub in the coastline bathroom, but I have no clue why they decided to get rid of it in the rework. Universal black ice. I'm guessing this guy means you unlocked black ice once and you could use it on every gun. No, this was never a thing, so this does fall under the Mandela effect. An event where you stole mini vaults and there were no beams in the floor. No, this is not the Mandela effect. This was a real event called the Grand Larceny event. It's only been in the game once and it was pretty fun, so I'd like to see it return. The SAS ops being immune to smoke's gas. Unless this was a thing in the beta or the alpha version of Siege, it was never a thing. Unfortunately, I have no way of testing out the alpha or beta, but my guy Varsity Reviews tested this out on the earliest build of Siege that you can get, and this was not a thing. If someone has a clip of the SAS ops being immune to gas, feel free to send it to me. I'll leave my Discord linked in the description. You can't headshot with a shotgun. The simple answer to that is you can headshot with a shotgun. However, a certain amount of pellets do have to hit the person in the head. You can't just have one pellet hit the person. I believe it has to be at least a fourth for it to count as a headshot. Callie and Glass shooting open castles. This is partially the Mandela effect because Callie could never open castles barricades with her gun. Her ability was always able to open up castles though. Glass on the other hand, at one point could open castle barricades, and he could put little holes in them too. Bandit having 3 barbed wire. Yes, this was a thing in the early days of Siege. Rappelling on the walls by the 2nd floor elevator on Bank. I would assume you mean the walls in the loan office, and no, I do not think this was ever possible. I hopped on an old version of Siege and tried it, and I couldn't get anything to work, so my guess is that you're just thinking of rappelling outside and just looking through this wall. Operators yelling and screaming in barbed wire. This was never a thing unless the barbed wire was electrified, so maybe that's what you're thinking of. Night maps. Night maps were definitely a thing, and I'm sure most old Siege players remember this. I would love to see night maps return, and I'm sure a lot of other players do too, but they didn't return with the Siege X update, so I'd be surprised if they do return at all, unless it's like a throwback event. Pedro just wanted to be in the video, so there you go, buddy. Castle being white. Castle was never white, so I don't know what you're talking about, but you gotta get those eyes checked out and lock in, buddy. Ella's DMR. No, there was never a point where Ella had a DMR. I don't even know where this came from. Maybe because her shotgun was really good at one point and it was almost like a DMR with how far away you could shoot. Finka being a 1-speed. No, Finka was never a 1-speed. What you could be thinking of is when all the LMGs got nerfed and made everyone slower when they ran with them. So this kind of makes her a 1-speed, but not really. It's more like a 1.5 speed. Ekko only had 1 drone. Yes, this was true. Ekko, when he first came out and for a little while after, only had 1 drone. It also used to be invisible, it couldn't scan enemies, the camera had a a green tint, and you had to hit enemies in the head in order to stun them. And don't forget the old stun effect that used to happen, where your screen would just wobble everywhere. It was awful. Voice actors getting changed. Yep, this was definitely a thing. Just to name a few were Tachanka, IQ, and Mira. These are some of Tachanka's old voice lines.
LMG mounted and loaded. LMG mounted and loaded. Loading magazine! Empty mag. Swapping mags! Bathroom!
Capcan with impacts. Yep, Capcan had impacts. He had that and a C4, which he lost at the same time. This wasn't even that long ago either. A spawn point on the house roof called helicopter. No, this was never a thing in the official game. However, this was a thing in the reveal trailer, so that's probably what you were thinking of. Although it was called roof and not helicopter, but you did rappel down from a helicopter. Alpha packs being added during Operation Health. Yep, this was a thing. They got added during Operation Health, which honestly I can't believe it's been 8 years, but yep, it's here on the roadmap. A subway/train station map. No, this was never a thing. It's gotta be from another game, Rainbow Six Rogue Spear. But as far as there being a train map in Siege, I couldn't find anything. But it would be cool to see something like this in the future. Knifing your teammates. This was never a thing, but if it did happen before, it was probably because of a bug, which this guy is claiming he saw a video of Legion getting knifed. I couldn't find the video anywhere, so my guess is that it was either a bug or a cheater, if the video even existed at all. Cade having 3 electric claws. No, this is not the Mandela effect. He actually did have 3 electric claws, but it was only on the test server. It never actually made it to the live build. Drones getting cleared by Jaeger's ADS. Nope, this was the Mandela effect for this guy. Jaeger's ADS could never destroy any drones. A sign on consulate that says, "Smile, you're on camera." Yep, this is always there. I checked a couple old videos of mine and it was there. It's champions, not champion. Now this one is a little bit tricky because I found mixed things. So I found this one picture that actually did just say champion, but it doesn't look like it was officially made by Ubisoft, and I can't find anything that says it was. But anytime you look on the actual game, or anything officially from Ubisoft, it says Champions. A charm that's a tortoise with a gun on its back. Yep, it's a real thing, part of a Tachanka bundle. Ella having her pinky up in her portrait. So this was changed for some unknown reason. From what I could find, she was throwing up the devil horns because of her rebellious and punk background. Or maybe she was just trying to be fancy, just like Patrick Star.
If you want to be fancy, hold your pinky up like this.
Regardless, I don't know why they would get rid of it. It was kind of weird to erase part of her personality. Thatcher rework. So this was a thing that was showed off during the Year 7 reveal panel. This obviously never happened, but it is interesting to see what they were gonna do. It basically would work, the longer you charge it up, the bigger the EMP blast would be. There is a rumor going around that Thatcher actually will get reworked at the end of Year 10, so we'll have to see if that happens. A bomb site in admin on old consulate. No, this was never a thing, but what you might be thinking of is secure area. This was a site for secure area on old consulate. Or what else you might be thinking of is old T-Hunt. It was definitely a location for old T-Hunt, where you had to go in and defuse a bomb. Valkyrie and Blackbeard having digital desert camo instead of multicam. Nope, they always had the multicam camo, as you can see in the reveal trailer. Maybe what you're thinking of is the Wind Bastion uniforms, because these are in the game, but they're not their default uniforms. A Finka boost reviving you out of a frost mat. Nope, this was never a thing. Didn't matter if it was yourself or a teammate, it didn't work. And I'm pretty sure it still doesn't, even with the frost rework. However, I did find a clip of someone self-reviving themselves with Finka out of a frost mat. But this was like an insanely rare glitch, so I'm not gonna count this. Choosing the game mode for ranked and choosing the map for ranked. So the game mode filter was definitely a thing, because I used to turn off bomb and play just secure area and hostage, just because I like those game modes a lot more. However, the map filter was not a thing for ranked. What you're probably thinking of is for T-Hunt, because for T-Hunt you actually were able to filter out what maps you wanted to play. And since you could play T-Hunt online, it was in a section for multiplayer. So I could definitely see how you'd get that mixed up. Tachanka's LMG doing more damage when it was mounted and loaded. Yep, this is actually true. It used to do 66 damage when it was mounted and loaded. Now that it's no longer mounted, it only does 49 damage. Ace's Selma's only opening up one hole. Nah, this was never a thing. Originally it was 3, but then it got reduced to 2, but it was never 1. Where you might have got this idea from was a concept video made by this guy named Z-Min. This guy's made some really cool concepts, but for this one, he made it so you would need to charge up Ace's gadget, The longer you charged it, the more it would deploy. Barbed wire slowing you down a lot more than it does now and taking 3 hits to break it. Yep, both of these things are true. Walking through old barbed wire was like walking through the mud on Origins on Black Ops 2. Ash not having a head hitbox. While she's always had a head hitbox, it was always very small. As you can see in Rogue 9's video, Ash doesn't have a forehead. There's also a line from Meister where he talks about it.
How does anyone manage to shoot Ash? Her head is so small.
Operation Health was supposed to fix the game. Yeah, I thought so too, but to this day, we still have an insane amount of problems. From cheaters to game-breaking bugs, the list goes on and on. Siege X improving the game. Ubisoft really dropped the ball hard with Siege X. There's the most cheaters there's ever been, and there's just so many glitches everywhere. It's honestly impressive how much worse the game got. The actual core gameplay is great, but the amount of cheaters and bugs that came with Siege X turned a lot of players away from the game. I'm hoping that Ubisoft locks in and fixes all these problems, but with Ubisoft's track record, I don't have high hopes. Glaz being a 3 armor, 1 speed. Nope, Glaz was never a 3 armor. He was a 2 armor, 2 speed at one point, but never a 3 armor. Maybe you're thinking of one of the other Spetnez ops, since they all used to be 3 armor, 1 speed. The devs saying they were going to make the game good. I don't want to keep repeating myself, but like I said, I do think the core gameplay is great, but there's just so many negatives that outweigh the positives right now. Blitz being a 4 speed. This is kind of true. I don't know if I'd call him a 4 speed, but he was way faster than he was intended to be. This was only on the test server, and it never made it to the live build, but it was still absolutely terrifying to play against as a defender. Since you also had Prime, Lion, and Finka, this is probably when attacking was the easiest it ever was. And that's all I got. I want to thank everyone for sending in their own Mandela effect experience in this game. Without you guys, I probably wouldn't have made this video. Even though a lot of them turned out to be true, it was still really cool to just go through and look at all these possible Mandela effect experiences. But it was even cooler finding the ones that actually were fake, and trying to figure out how people might be thinking that way. Did you ever have a Mandela effect experience in Siege that wasn't mentioned in this video? Be sure to leave it in the comments. I'll be reading through all of them. And who knows, depending on how this video does, maybe I'll make a part 2. But thank you again everyone for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. What am I supposed to do here?
Come on! Ah! Oh my!
Oh yeah!